So, the 6th episode of Doctor Who Season 2 has just been released, the Interstellar Song Contest, and usually I would do a little review/reaction to the entire episode. I might still do that at some point this week, but for the time being, today, I've just got to talk about that post-credit scene, the Mrs. Flood reveal that we got after all this time. Finally, at last we know who she is, and I'm sure I can spend 10 minutes or so just talking about that alone, because there's quite a lot to say. So yeah, Mrs. Flood is the Rani, the evil Time Lady previously played by Kate O'Mara in the 80s, the creation of Pip and Jane Baker. She previously appeared in The Mark of the Rani opposite the 6th Doctor, and Time and the Rani opposite the 7th, and of course as well in the Children in Need 1993 special, Dimensions in Time, famously, alongside a load of doctors and companions. And that's not all, because of course Mrs. Flood bigenerated into another incarnation of the Rani, a new incarnation played by Archie Punjabi, so Mrs. Flood is still kind of on the scene very much, but we also have this new Rani as well, the two Ranis, like the two masters in The Doctor Falls. And this all comes exactly 40 years after the debut of the Rani in The Mark of the Rani in 1985, so a lovely full circle moment. And of course the Rani is one of those last remaining big bads from the classic series to not have so far returned in New Who, and New Who's been going for 20 years now, Classic Who have been going for 20 or 22 years when the Rani first appeared, so all round it just feels very right that this has happened. Now, the first thing to say is that this did leak in advance. There was a thing on Reddit and all over the internet about how Mrs. Flood was going to be the Rani and she was going to bigenerate into another incarnation at the end of the Interstellar Song Contest. I had seen that myself in advance. I think I addressed it in one particularly spoiler-filled video with Joe on the channel, at the start of the season or just beforehand, but I deliberately avoided referring to it after that point. I just thought, if this does end up being true, I don't want to be the person that spoils it for people. But of course, though, as well, there was a lot of general speculation, even without that, about Mrs. Flood possibly being the Rani, because of all the things I've said already, the Flood, Rain, Rani thing, and because the character hadn't so far returned to our screens, so it did seem kind of somewhat likely, perhaps, although I guess it was still all to play for, and even as someone who'd seen the leak, it was still to play for. I was not going to believe anything until I actually saw it with my own eyes, and even after this point as well, I've got no idea where this storyline is heading in the finale. And even having seen the leak beforehand, I still found this moment absolutely sensational. My eyes were glued to the screen when it finally happened, and I was like, oh my god, it's all true. She is the Rani. All along, she's been the Rani, which is one of those weird things of okay, now kind of recontextualizing every single scene that Anita Dobson has appeared in as Mrs. Flood, and watching that back and going, okay, so she was the Rani there with Cherry in her bedroom, or she was the Rani in the prison cell with Conrad, she was the Rani on the street in 73 Yards with Ruby, all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure the TARDIS Wiki guys are going to have a field day with that as well, kind of going back to the pages for Mrs. Flood and the Rani and merging them together or linking them together and going back and adding 73 Yards and the season 1 finale and all the episodes from this year and the Church Ruby Road even as well into the list of appearances for the Rani. The Rani was there all along and we just didn't realise. That is crazy. I suppose there was a point there as well about whether it makes sense for Mrs. Flood to have been the Rani in those scenes. Will we go back and think, hang on a minute, that doesn't quite add up, that doesn't quite make sense? There's definitely stuff that still needs to be explained, like her change of heart in the church on Ruby Road, the whole thing where she literally is the innocent old woman to begin with, and then she sees the TARDIS dematerialise. What changed there? What triggered that kind of transformation in her character? And I'm also a little bit confused at this point how this all fits into the wider storylines we have going on about the pantheon of gods and all that kind of stuff. The Rani is very much a scientist, someone who does experiments and deals with science and explanations, rather than all this stuff with gods and religion, or hinting at that kind of mythical creatures and fantasy. How all those things gel together. I did kind of quite like the theory that Mrs. Flood, / the Rani now, if we're calling her that, had created the pantheon of gods in a petri dish. They were her experiments, they were her lab rats. I think that would be a nice explanation to kind of, tie those things together. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. There's still so much to play for in the finale about where we go from here. And there's so much exciting stuff still to come. We've not had the Doctor's reaction to this all yet. He's not even aware of the fact that Mrs. Flood is the Rani and there's this whole extra incarnation. He's not aware of the fact that another bigeneration has occurred. He's not had a kind of an encounter with them yet, a face-to-face thing. Of course, presumably as well, we're also going to see Mel Bush go up against the Rani as well. She was there right at the start of the Rani's journey in TV Doctor Who. Okay, the Rani goes way back, further to the Doctor's childhood. They were on Gallifrey together with the Master and stuff. But in terms of the adventures that we've seen on TV, Mel was there from the start in both those stories, The Mark of the Rani and Time of the Rani. The Rani even dressed up as Mel and kind of impersonated her in Time of the Rani as well. So it'd be very nice to see her kind of get her back for that and put her in her place. There's also still so much to come from the two Ranis themselves, we've barely scratched the surface. Mrs. Flood, first of all, and East Dobson, we've seen loads of her over the past couple of years, particularly this season with the weekly appearances, the weekly cameos. Now she has been unleashed, we know who she is, she's no longer putting on all these different personas and things. She is the Rani, still referred to as Mrs. Flood, I suppose, and I'm sure that will continue into the finale to kind of differentiate her from this new incarnation. But I do hope we get to see more of her, and I'm sure we will, and that's kind of the whole point of a bi-generation, really, isn't it? Keeping the old incarnation around so they're not gone forever, that they can still kind of be part of the picture. The whole thing is very reminiscent of the first time the Master returned in the new series in Series 3, again, handled by Russell T Davies. We had that initial story, Utopia, with a kind of older Master who was kind of disguised and not, fully himself, with Derek Jacobi, and then, he regenerated into a new, younger incarnation in John Sim, and it was him that kind of carried us forward into the finale there, the main storyline. It's basically the same thing here, where you have an older actor and a slightly younger actor who's a bit more agile and can do a bit more stuff than Ernest Dobson, presumably, because she's in her 80s. Except this time, the older actor is still involved with what's going on, so it's a nicer way of doing it, I think. Obviously, that worked with Professor Yana, back in Series 3, but now that we've got bi-generation, why not do this? Why not have them both here? Why not have two Ranis? Why not make a double act and have the kind of the bantering between them, which we've seen a little bit of here, hints and bits and pieces, with this new incarnation played by Archie Punjabi, who's very much more commanding and kind of in control, and she's very much like the boss out of the two of them here. Mrs. Flood is kind of like her lackey, her servants, which I do like that as an idea, where she's kind of, just assisting her almost, here's the Vindicator readings, and then the new Ryan's like, chop chop, follow me, and she kind of follows on obediently, she's kind of doing her bidding. I hope that's not all we see of Denise Dobson from now on, she's kind of reduced to being this servant character. I do hope she still kind of gets some scenes where she's the Rani in her own right, and is being evil and stuff, and she's not just the second in command. But at the same time, the idea of that double act is irresistible, and it just, kind of differentiates them as well. It kind of makes them a little bit more distinctive. I think the new Rani is very much in the mould of other kind of middle-aged female Rusty Davies villains as well, like people like Miss Foster in Partners in Crime, or Cassandra O'Brien, or the type of villain that you'd see in the Sarah Jane Adventures a lot, like that first story of Series 5 with the Metal Kind and whatever that character was called with the big fur coats. I thought that was really refreshing, and it kind of made me realise as well that we've not had a female villain like that, for some time, that I can remember at least, where the kind of campery is dialed up to 11, and it's just a really delicious performance. So yes, overall, the Mrs. Flood reveal gets a big thumbs up from me. Bringing back a classic series villain is always going to go down well with fans, but I just think here, the audacity to bring back the Rani, a character who was always rumoured to be returning, the fact that they've actually gone and done it is just so bold and crazy and ridiculous, but also completely brilliant, and I'm so excited to see where we go from here in the finale with our two Ranis, our Rani pairing, our Rani double act. But what did you think of the Mrs. Flood reveal? Did it live up to all of your hopes and expectations? Had it been spoiled for you in advance? And also, what did you think of the return of bi-generation and this first glimpse of our new Rani played by Archie Punjabi? Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments section below. Please like the video as well if you did enjoy it, and subscribe to the channel if you're new as we head into the climax of Season 2. I'm really trying to reach 9,000 subscribers at the moment, so any help with that is very much appreciated. But otherwise, until the next one, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye for now.